Hello everyone. Today we're going to be doing our lecture notes on Chapter 14, which is the history of life on Earth. We're going to start with fossil evidence and move on to the origin of life on Earth after that. The Earth was formed about 4.6 billion years ago. The Earth is pretty old. The iron core of the Earth happened. It was formed when gravity pulled the densest elements to the center. And it's very hot down there and it's very, very dense. And that's, of course, is what gives Earth its magnetic properties, because the Earth is molten iron, the core of the Earth. After about 500 million years, and a lot of cooling had to take place in order for this to happen, a solid crust formed on the surface of the Earth. The gases that were present, many of these in the atmosphere, the early atmosphere of Earth, are not the type of gases that organisms like us or any organism that is aerobic, meaning they require oxygen, would like. Carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, and hydrogen cyanide are all very poisonous. And the most likely source for this very nasty atmosphere that was first on the Earth is the venting from volcanoes. A fossil is any preserved evidence of an organism. Fossils are very rare, they do not happen that often. When they do happen, they give paleontologists a very good idea of the types of organisms that were on the Earth at what times. So fossils are a great tool to figure out what has happened over the 4.6 billion year history of the Earth, but they are very rare. Most organisms decompose before they have a chance to fossilize. Now here are the different types of fossils. Trace fossils, molds and casts, replacements, petrified or permineralized, amber, and original material. Of course, if you've seen the movie Jurassic Park, you're familiar with amber. That is an entire organism trapped in the tree sap. And a trace fossil would be finger footprints or a tail dragging, like a track from a tail dragging, or feces. Molds and casts are opposites of each other. They're either an impression of an organism or a mold filled with sediment. Replacement would be where an organism basically mineralizes. Petrified would be like wood. Wood is petrified often, where the spaces in between are filled with the minerals and it literally becomes stone. And mummification or freezing is the original material. So feel free to pause this video and jot down any of this information that you need. All right, so this is just to make sure that you understand which is which. So again, you can pause this and you can go through it if you would like. All right, so fossils are formed mainly in sedimentary rocks. They're not formed in igneous rocks very often. The sediments will build up until they cover the organism's remains, and then minerals replace the organic matter or fill the empty pore spaces. There are two different ways that you can figure out how old fossils are. You can use a process called relative dating, where you basically figure out that the upper layers are the youngest and the inner layers are the oldest. So it's all relative to the layers that are above and below it. It's not exact. Like you can't get an exact age on rocks this way, but you can figure out kind of how old they are based on what's above and below them. And sorry, going back, that's called the law of superposition because the rock layers were superimposed on top of the ones that are older. You can also use a process called radiometric dating, where you use half-life of radioactive isotopes to determine the age. And this is when one radioactive isotope actually decays into another isotope, like carbon-14 changing to nitrogen-14. And this is very exact. The half-life of carbon-14 is 5,730 years. That means every 5,730 years, half of that material changes to nitrogen. So you can use the percentages of nitrogen left in the half-life and figure out how old the fossil is. And carbon is always present in living organisms. Now, the geological timescale is a model that expresses the major geological and biological events. And we're mainly going to be talking about the Precambrian time, the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic eras. The Precambrian time is nearly 90% of the Earth's history, but the only organisms that were really here were autotrophic prokaryotes, and they basically enriched the atmosphere with oxygen. They were what we call chemotrophs. They took the poisonous gases that were in the atmosphere of the Earth at that time and they changed it to oxygen. And when that happened, it gave other organisms the chance. The Paleozoic era is where you have something called the Cambrian explosion. It's not what it sounds like. Nothing blew up. But what did blow up is a huge influx of organisms appearing, and life in the oceans continued to evolve. Everything started in the water, and stuff started moving to the land. And you're going to have the first insects emerging. You're going to have fish, land plants, and tetrapods. And all of this happened during the Cambrian period. Now, a mass extinction ended the Paleozoic era between the end of the Permian period. That's when 60 to 75% of the species alive went extinct. Now, the Mesozoic era are what you probably know more about, because this is when you have dinosaurs ruling the earth. And mammals were present towards the middle to end, but they were very, very small. And we're talking like rodent-like. They weren't big. The dinosaurs definitely were the big kids on the block. And then, of course, you have birds that evolved from a group of predatory dinosaurs. And then about 65 million years ago, a meteorite struck the Earth and killed all the dinosaurs. And this is the big mass extinction that we think about. This is the one, scientists are pretty sure this is what happened, that a meteorite struck the Earth and killed most of the dinosaurs. Now, you can use plate tectonics, which is the movement of several large plates that make up the surface of the Earth. And you can see how the continents changed over time. The Cenozoic era are basically when mammals became dominant. This is the era that we're in now. And after the mass extinction at the end of the Mesozoic era, mammals of all kinds began to pop up. Now, go back to that for just 1 second, because I want to make the point that what ends every era is a mass extinction. So you got to think about what's going to happen at the end of the era we're in now. Something's going to happen to wipe most of the life on Earth away. But don't get your affairs in order just yet, because some scientists believe that the mass extinction is ongoing, because there's so many organisms, so many animals, so many plants becoming extinct every single day. And that's why conservation efforts are so important, because we need to try to preserve what's on our Earth. All right, so spontaneous generation is the idea that life arises from non-life. Now, Francisco Redi, he was an Italian scientist, and he tested the idea that flies arose spontaneously from rotting meat. And it seems weird that you would think that life would just appear from nowhere, but this is what scientists thought at the time. And Louis Pasteur actually did more with Redi, because Redi basically proved that the only thing that put maggots on the meat were the flies. And then Pasteur went a little further, and the theory of biogenesis basically states that only living organisms can produce other living organisms. So he designed an experiment to see if biogenesis was true, even for bacteria. And this is the famous flask experiment. And at the end of the day, he did show that life has to come from other life. And another important thing that was gained from Pasteur was the process of pasteurization, which is using heat to kill bacteria in juice and milk, and it doesn't make us sick. All right, so there are a few modern ideas of where life started. Primordial soup was the early hypothesis about the origin of life. Organic molecules could have been synthesized from simple reactions. UV light from the sun and electric discharge from lightning might have been the energy sources. Stanley Miller and Harold Urey were the first to show that that actually could happen. This is a fascinating experiment. And they simulated the early conditions of the earth and jolted electricity through it, and then out in the beaker at the bottom, these small organic molecules did appear. So that showed that proteins, amino acids and proteins could actually come from this primordial soup theory. So in order for proteins to assemble, the amino acids have to come together. And scientists basically hypothesized that pieces of clay were able to hold them together long enough for them to make a protein. So if you can't make protein, then you can't make a living organism. RNA is very, very good to look at to see what the origin of life came from, because it hasn't changed over time. Many biologists believe that RNA was first, and it was the original template for DNA. So cellular evolution is the hypothesis that the first cells were prokaryotes, and over time these prokaryotes actually engulfed other prokaryotes and became eukaryotic cells. So you have some autotrophic organisms that do not need or produce oxygen. Those are archaea. They're very important. So photosynthesizing prokaryotes evolved not long after, and cyanobacteria are the ones that have been found in rocks as old as 3.5 billion years. And cyano means blue-green. So these are going to be organisms that have chlorophyll. The endosymbiote theory is a theory that the cells live together, the prokaryotes. The larger prokaryote engulfed the smaller ones and made mitochondria and chloroplasts in order to make a eukaryotic cell. And feel free to pause this and jot this down if you need to. And that's all we have for the history of life. So please go ahead and work your way through the module and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.